The hotel maid answered the ringing phone without thinking. Strange words poured from her lips, a language she'd never learned, never heard. The guest in the lobby froze, his silver eyes widening. What she didn't know, he was a vampire king who'd been hiding for centuries, and she'd just spoken the tongue of his vanished queen. The phone shouldn't have been ringing. Mira stared at the ancient rotary phone behind the reception desk, its shrill cry cutting through the howl of the storm outside. Every light in the Hotel Cervantes had been flickering for the past hour, and she'd just sent the last remaining guest, Mr. Voss from room 12, to the dining room with a promise of hot tea. The phone rang again, insistent, angry. Cervantes Hotel, how may I? Myra's practiced greeting died in her throat. The voice on the other end wasn't a voice at all. It was layered, like 10 people speaking through water, their words overlapping in a rhythm that made her teeth ache. Static crackled between syllables that rose and fell like a chant. Her hand tightened on the receiver. Hello? I can't understand you. The storm must be. The voice spoke again, and this time something inside Myra's chest pulled. Her mouth opened. Words spilled out, fluid, melodic, ancient. She didn't know what they meant, but they felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. The syllables rolled off her tongue as if she'd spoken them every day of her life, as if they'd been sleeping in her bones, waiting.
Noctara veshat almir.
Serat kolvindara. The lights went out. Complete darkness swallowed the lobby. The phone line went dead with a sharp crack that made Mira drop the receiver. It clattered against the marble desk, swinging on its cord. What was that? The voice came from behind her, smooth, controlled, but carrying an edge sharp enough to cut glass. Mira spun around, her heart hammering. In the flash of lightning through the tall windows, she saw him, Mr. Voss, standing at the entrance to the lobby. He wasn't moving, wasn't breathing, just staring at her with eyes that caught the lightning and threw it back silver. I don't know, Mira stammered, backing against the desk. The phone, someone was speaking, but I couldn't understand them, and then I just... Say it again. He took a step forward, and Mira noticed for the first time how tall he was. How still, like a statue that had learned to walk. What you just spoke. Say it again. I don't know what I said. I don't even remember. Noctara Veshun Talmir, his voice dropped to barely a whisper. The blood of Noctara calls forth. Sereth Kol Vindar, the sealed throne, shall answer. The way he said it made the words sound like a funeral dirge. Another flash of lightning. In that split second of brightness, Mira saw his face clearly. Aristocratic features, sharp cheekbones, dark hair swept back from a pale forehead. But it was his expression that made her blood run cold. He looked like a man who'd just seen a ghost. Or recognized one. How do you know what I said? Myra's voice came out smaller than she intended. Where did you learn Old Noctis? He closed the distance between them in 2 strides.
Who taught you?
Who sent you here? I don't know what that is. I've never heard of. Don't lie to me. His hand slammed against the desk beside her, and the marble cracked. Spiderweb fractures raced across the surface. That language has been dead for 300 years. The only people who spoke it were the royal seers of the Noctara court, and they're all... He stopped. His silver eyes widened slightly. They're all what? Mira whispered. Before he could answer, every window in the lobby exploded inward. Mira screamed, throwing her arms over her head as glass rained down. But the shards never touched her. She looked up to find Mr. Voss standing between her and the shattered windows, his back to her, arms spread wide. Pieces of glass hung suspended in the air around him, frozen mid-fall like deadly snowflakes. Stay behind me, he said calmly, as if stopping a storm of glass was something he did every Tuesday. What's happening? Myra's whole body was shaking. What are you? Someone who's been alive far too long. The glass dropped to the floor with a musical crash. And you, apparently, are someone who shouldn't exist. The storm outside intensified. Wind screamed through the broken windows, carrying with it the smell of wet earth and something else, something metallic and old, like copper coins buried for centuries. The chandelier above them began to sway, its crystals tinkling like wind chimes. "We need to leave this lobby," Mr. Voss said, his voice tight.
Now. Why?
"What's?" The chandelier stopped swaying. Then it began to spin, slowly at first, then faster and faster until the crystals blurred into a circle of light. The light grew brighter, shifting from white to pale blue to deep violet. Mira felt that pull in her chest again, stronger this time. Her lips moved without permission, forming words in that same ancient tongue. Talmir Sereth. Talmir Sereth. Talmir Sereth. "Stop." Mr. Voss grabbed her shoulders. "Don't call them. Whatever you're doing, stop." But Mira couldn't stop. The words were pouring out of her now, faster and faster, and with each syllable, the violet light grew brighter. Shadows began to peel away from the walls, gathering beneath the spinning chandelier like smoke. For just a moment, less than a heartbeat, Mira saw something in those shadows. Faces.
Dozens of them.
Hundreds. All turning toward her with hollow eyes that burned with the same violet light. And they were bowing. Mr. Voss swore in a language Mira didn't recognize and yanked her toward the stairs. The moment her feet left the marble floor, the words stopped. The chandelier crashed down, shattering into 1,000 pieces exactly where she'd been standing. The violet light died. The shadows retreated. Silence fell over the lobby, broken only by the rain and Myra's ragged breathing. "What?" she gasped, clutching the banister. "In God's name was that?" Mr. Voss turned to face her, and in the dim emergency lighting that had flickered back on, Mira saw something that made her forget how to breathe. His eyes were glowing, actually glowing, with that same silver light she'd seen in the lightning. "Not God's," he said quietly.
Meaning?
He smiled, and Mira saw the fangs. "My name isn't really Mr. Voss," he continued, his voice carrying centuries of weight. "It's Draven Voss. I'm the last king of the Noctara court, and I've been hiding in this hotel for 70 years, waiting for my people's magic to finally die out." He looked at the shattered chandelier, at the scorch marks on the floor where the violet light had burned. "But you just woke it up." Mira didn't sleep. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those hollow faces bowing in the shadows. Every time she tried to convince herself it was a nightmare, she looked at her hands and saw the faint violet glow that had taken an hour to fade from her fingertips. And then there was the small fact that a vampire king was sleeping 3 doors down from her staff quarters. Or not sleeping. Did vampires sleep? At 6 in the morning, Mira gave up and headed downstairs to start her shift. The lobby had been cleaned, somehow, and the shattered chandelier replaced with a simple ceiling fixture. The cracked marble desk looked brand new. "Magic," a voice said behind her. "Useful for hiding evidence." Mira jumped, spinning to find Draven descending the stairs. In the morning light filtering through the repaired windows, he looked almost human. Almost. But his movements were too fluid, too graceful, like watching a predator pretend to be prey. "The guests," Mira whispered urgently. "Did you compel them to forget the storm damage?" "Yes," he straightened his cufflinks, an oddly normal gesture from a creature who'd just admitted to being centuries old. "They think they slept through a minor power outage. Nothing more." "That's not possible. Neither is speaking a dead language. Yet here we are, his silver eyes fixed on her. "We need to talk.
Properly.
But first." The elevator dinged. An elderly couple emerged, the Hendersons from room 8. Mrs. Henderson was clutching her husband's arm, her face pale. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice shaking. "Did anyone else hear the whispering last night?" Myra's stomach dropped. Whispering. In the walls, Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses nervously. "Started around 3 in the morning. Sounded like a dozen people having a conversation right behind the wallpaper. But when I pressed my ear against the wall, it stopped." Draven's expression didn't change, but Mira saw his jaw tighten. "Old pipes," he said smoothly. This hotel was built in 1847. The plumbing makes unusual sounds during storms. Pipes don't whisper in Latin, Mrs. Henderson said firmly. It wasn't Latin, her husband corrected. It was something older. I studied ancient languages at Oxford, and I've never heard anything like. The lights flickered.
Once. Twice. 3 times.
Then steady again. Mrs. Henderson gripped her husband's arm tighter.
There.
Did you see? That's been happening all morning. Every room on the 3rd floor. I'll have maintenance check the electrical system, Mira heard herself say, falling back on professional autopilot. I apologize for the disturbance. After the Hendersons left for breakfast, Mira turned to Draven. It's getting worse, isn't it? Whatever I woke up. Come with me. He led her to the hotel's oldest wing, down a corridor Mira rarely used because guests complained it was too cold. As they walked, she noticed the wallpaper was peeling in strange patterns, not from age, but as if something beneath was trying to push through. Draven stopped at the end of the hall, in front of a storage closet Mira had never seen unlocked. This hotel, he said quietly, producing an iron key, was built by my people. After the fall of the Noctara court, the survivors needed somewhere to hide the burial vault. Somewhere remote. Somewhere humans wouldn't dig. He opened the door. It wasn't a storage closet. Stone steps descended into darkness that seemed to swallow the hallway light. The vault is directly beneath us, Draven continued. 200 feet down. Sealed with blood magic that should have lasted 1,000 years, he turned to face her. But blood magic responds to bloodlines. And somehow, impossibly, you carry the marker of the High Oracle. I'm nobody. I grew up in an orphanage in Prague. I came here 6 months ago because I needed work. I don't have any family, any history. Look at your shadow. Mira glanced down at the floor. Her shadow was wrong. It stretched behind her normally, but for just a second, less than a blink, it split. The second shadow was kneeling, head bowed, hands raised as if presenting something to an invisible throne. Mira stumbled backward, pressing herself against the wall. What is that? What's happening to me? You're remembering, Draven's voice was soft, almost sad. Or she is. The oracle who sealed my court 3 centuries ago. She spoke the binding words and vanished the same night. We thought she died. We thought. A scream echoed from downstairs. They ran back to the lobby to find the Hendersons and 3 other guests clustered together, pointing at the walls. The wallpaper was moving. Not peeling. Moving. Like something beneath was breathing, pressing against the surface in rhythmic waves. And where the paper bulged, dark shapes appeared, handprints.
Dozens of them.
Hundreds. Pressing from the inside out. Everyone outside, Mira commanded, her voice surprisingly steady.
Now.
There's a gas leak. Move. The guests didn't argue. They fled for the front doors, leaving Mira and Draven alone in the lobby. The handprints were spreading, covering every wall now. And beneath them, that whispering the Hendersons had mentioned, thousands of voices speaking in unison, forming words in Old Noctis. Mira understood them perfectly. Oracle. We hear you. We rise. They think you're calling them, Draven said, his voice tight with something that might have been fear. The court. The generals. The Seer Council. Everyone we buried to stop the endless wars, he grabbed her arm. Whatever power is waking inside you, you need to control it. Because if that vault opens, if they rise before we understand what's happening. The wallpaper tore. A single pale hand thrust through, fingers splayed, reaching for Mira. Then the lights went out again. The hand retreated the moment Draven touched it. He'd moved faster than Myra's eyes could track, his palm pressed against the pale fingers emerging from the wall. Silver light flared, and the hand jerked back through the torn wallpaper with a sound like a gasp. We're leaving, Draven said.
Now.
20 minutes later, they were in his car, a sleek black sedan that looked too modern for someone who claimed to be centuries old, speeding down the mountain road toward the town of Aldshire. Mira watched the hotel disappear in the side mirror, its windows dark despite the afternoon sun. The guests are checked into the inn on Main Street, compelled to believe the hotel is under renovation. Draven's hands were steady on the wheel, but his jaw was tight. We have maybe 12 hours before the vault destabilizes completely. We need answers. Answers about what? Why I can suddenly speak a language I've never learned. Why dead people are trying to break through my hotel walls. Answers about what the Oracle did 300 years ago. He glanced at her. And why she came back. Vaultshire was the kind of town that appeared on postcards, cobblestone streets, timber frame buildings, a church with a bell tower that dominated the skyline. Draven parked near the town square and led Mira to a building that had clearly once been a church but now wore a faded sign. Vaultshire Historical Archive. Inside, the smell of old paper and candle wax hung heavy in the air. A young librarian looked up from her desk, started to offer a greeting, then met Draven's eyes and went still. We need the restricted section, Draven said quietly. The Noctara collection. The librarian nodded slowly, her movements mechanical, and handed him a brass key without a word. Stop doing that to people, Mira whispered as they climbed the stairs to the second floor. Would you prefer I ask politely and wait 3 weeks for approval? The restricted section was a small room lined with glass cases containing manuscripts that looked like they'd crumble at a touch. Draven moved directly to a case in the back corner, unlocking it with the brass key. The moment he lifted the glass lid, every manuscript in the room began to tremble. Draven. It's reacting to you. He carefully removed a leather-bound book, its cover decorated with symbols that made Myra's eyes water. The last writings of the Oracle Council. Only those carrying Oracle blood can. The book flew out of his hands. It sailed through the air and landed open in front of Mira, pages flipping rapidly as if caught in a wind that didn't exist. The pages stopped on an illustration that made her breath catch. A woman kneeling before a throne of bones. Her hands raised, her mouth open in song or scream. And around her, hundreds of shadowed figures bowing. The woman had Myra's face. I don't understand, Mira breathed. That can't be me. I wasn't even born 300 years ago. Souls don't die, Draven said softly, standing beside her. They cycle, return. The Oracle magic passes through bloodlines, but when a bloodline ends, he touched the illustration gently. The soul finds another vessel. Myra's hands moved without her permission, touching the page. The symbols around the illustration began to glow with that familiar violet light, and her mouth opened. Words poured out in Old Noctis, her voice layered with something else, someone else, speaking through her. When the tongue of blood speaks again, the court shall rise. When the seal breaks, the king must choose, vengeance or peace, war or silence, crown or grave. The book slammed shut. Mira gasped, stumbling backward. Draven caught her before she fell, his grip cold and steady. The prophecy, he whispered. After 300 years, I finally hear the rest of it. There's more? Myra's tongue felt heavy, her throat raw as if she'd been screaming. The Oracle sealed my court to prevent a war that would have consumed half of Europe. Draven released her, moving to the window. But she never explained why. Never told us what she saw in her visions that made her betray everything we'd built. His reflection in the glass looked haunted. Some legends say she loved me. Others say she feared me. I've spent 3 centuries trying to understand which was true. Outside, the sun was setting, painting Vaultshire in shades of red and gold. In that light, Mira saw him, a figure in a dark cloak standing across the square, watching the archive building. His hood was up, but she caught a glimpse of his face.
Scarred.
Ancient. Smiling. Draven, she said carefully. We're being watched. He turned, following her gaze. Every muscle in his body went rigid.
No.
Who is that? General Kane, the name came out like a curse. My second in command. I banished him 200 years ago for trying to break the seal. Draven's hands clenched into fists. He must have felt the magic stirring. If he's here, if he knows you're the Oracle Reborn. The figure across the square raised one hand in a mocking salute. Then he was gone, moving faster than humanly possible, disappearing into the shadows between buildings. We need to get back to the hotel, Draven said urgently, already moving toward the stairs.
Now.
If Kane reaches the vault before we do. A bell began to toll. Not the church bell in the square. This sound came from the mountain, deep and resonant, like a heartbeat made of bronze. Through the window, Mira saw it. The Hotel Cervantes, lit from within by violet light. The vault was opening. They arrived at midnight to find the hotel's front doors wide open.
No guests.
No staff. Just silence and that violet light pulsing from every window like a dying star's heartbeat. Stay close to me, Draven said, but Mira was already moving toward the entrance, pulled by something she couldn't name. The lobby was freezing. Their breath misted in the air despite it being summer. Frost crept across the marble floors in delicate patterns that looked almost like writing. Old Noctis writing. The temperature drops when the veil between life and death thins, Draven explained, his voice barely above a whisper. They're close now. Very close. The elevator stood open, its brass doors gleaming. But Myra's attention was drawn to something else, a door she'd never noticed before, tucked beneath the grand staircase. It was carved from black wood, covered in the same symbols she'd seen in the manuscript. And it was unlocked. That's not possible, Draven breathed. I sealed that door myself. Blood magic. It should have held for another 700 years. Mira reached for the handle. The moment her fingers touched the cold metal, warmth flooded through her. Recognition, like greeting an old friend. The door swung open silently, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. Don't, Draven warned, but his voice was weak, uncertain. I have to. Mira didn't know how she knew, but she did. They're waiting for me. She descended. The stairs went down, far deeper than should have been possible. The hotel was only 3 stories, but Mira counted 200 steps before the stairs finally ended in a vast chamber. The burial vault. Torches burst to life along the walls as she entered, their flames violet instead of orange. The chamber was massive, its ceiling lost in shadow, and arranged in perfect circles, like ripples on a pond, were sarcophagi.
Hundreds of them.
Each one carved from black stone, each one decorated with names and titles in Old Noctis. Mist clung to the floor, swirling around Myra's ankles as she walked deeper into the vault. Don't touch them, Draven said from behind her. He'd followed, of course. If even one wakes before we understand what's happening. Mira wasn't listening. She was drawn to the center of the chamber, where a single sarcophagus sat elevated on a dais. Unlike the others, this one was white marble, almost glowing in the torchlight. The name carved into it made her heart stop. Elara Theshmar, High Oracle, beloved traitor. That's Myra's voice cracked. That's me. That was her. Draven stood beside her now, staring at the sarcophagus with an expression Mira couldn't read.
You.
I don't know anymore, he reached out, fingers hovering over the carved name. I had this made after she vanished. A memorial for someone who destroyed everything I'd built, and yet. He didn't finish. Mira touched the marble. The world exploded into light. Visions slammed into her mind. Memories that weren't hers, but somehow were. She saw herself, Elara, standing in a throne room made of bones and silver. Saw Draven younger, fiercer, his eyes burning with ambition as he planned conquests that would drown nations in blood. Saw herself falling in love with a monster. Saw the visions that came after. Cities burning, children screaming, the world drowning in an endless night as vampire armies spread across Europe like a plague. Saw herself making the choice, betray the man she loved or watch the world die. The vision shattered. Mira gasped, pulling her hand back. Around them, the mist began to move with purpose, forming shapes. The sarcophagi started to glow, one by one, like candles being lit in sequence.
No, Draven whispered.
Not yet. We're not ready. A sarcophagus near them cracked open. Mist poured out, thick and silver, coalescing into a figure. A woman in ancient armor, her eyes hollow but aware. She looked at Mira and immediately dropped to one knee, her armored fist pressed against her chest. "High Oracle," she said, her voice like whined through a crypt. "We have waited so long." Another sarcophagus opened. Then another. Then 10 more. Warriors, scholars, advisors, all emerging from their stone prisons as spirits, all solid enough to seem real but transparent enough to see through. And all of them, every single one, turned toward Mira and knelt. "Oracle," they murmured in unison. "The seal is breaking. Command us." Mira stumbled backward, overwhelmed. I can't." "You sealed us," one of the spirits said, a man in robes who must have been a scholar. "You spoke the binding words and scattered our souls into sleep. Only you can wake us fully. Only you can restore what was taken. Or keep it buried forever," Draven said sharply, stepping between Mira and the kneeling spirits. "She owes you nothing." The court fell because it deserved to fall. The spirits hissed as one, their forms flickering with anger. "The king speaks treason," the armored woman said coldly. "After the oracle saved him from his own madness." "Saved me?" Draven's voice rose. "She destroyed my empire, scattered my people, left me alone in exile for 300 years. To stop you from destroying the world." The words burst from Myra's lips in Old Noctis, echoing through the vault with authority that didn't feel like hers. "I saw what you would become, what we would all become. The seal wasn't betrayal, it was mercy." Silence fell. The spirits watched her with those hollow eyes, waiting. Draven stared at her, something breaking in his expression. "You remember. Some of it," Mira whispered. "Enough." Above them, the hotel groaned, a deep, resonant sound like the earth itself was shifting. Cracks appeared in the vault ceiling, and through them, Mira heard something that made her blood run cold. Screaming. And laughter. "Cain," Draven breathed. "He's here." The vault shook violently, dust raining from the ceiling. The kneeling spirits flickered like candle flames in wind, their hollow eyes turning upward. "The general comes," the armored woman said. "He brings others, the banished ones." "How many?" Draven demanded. "Enough." An explosion rocked the hotel above them. Through the cracks in the ceiling, Mira saw fire, real fire, not the violet flames of magic. Cain wasn't being subtle. "We need to leave." Draven grabbed Myra's arm. "There's another way out. A tunnel that leads to the old capital ruins." "The oracle cannot flee," one of the spirits protested. "She must complete the awakening. She must survive," Draven snarled. "Or there won't be anyone left to wake you." He pulled Mira toward a passage hidden behind the white sarcophagus. The spirits didn't follow, but their eyes tracked her movement, hungry and desperate. The tunnel was narrow, carved from raw stone, and it went on for what felt like miles. Myra's lungs burned, her legs ached, but Draven never slowed. Behind them, she heard crashes and screams, the sounds of the hotel collapsing. They emerged in a forest clearing just as dawn broke. Mira fell to her knees, gasping. Around them, trees towered ancient and dark, their branches twisted into shapes that looked almost deliberate. And beyond the trees, rising from the mist like broken teeth, were ruins. Massive stone structures, crumbled and overgrown, but still recognizable as once great buildings. Columns that must have stood 60 feet tall. Archways carved with the same symbols from the vault. A palace, or what remained of one, its bones stark against the morning sky. "Noctara," Draven said quietly. "My capital. My home." He looked smaller somehow, standing among the ruins of his empire. More human. Mira stood on shaking legs, and the moment she did, the world tilted. Visions crashed over her like waves, stronger now, clearer. She saw this place as it had been. Magnificent towers of black stone and silver, streets paved with marble, fountains that ran with water that glowed in the moonlight. She saw Draven on a throne of bones, crown of iron thorns on his head, and herself, Ilara, standing beside him. Not kneeling.
Standing. Equal.
We ruled together, she whispered. I wasn't just an oracle. I was your queen. Draven's face showed nothing, but his silence was answer enough. More memories flooded in. Planning wars in the throne room. Draven's armies growing, spreading across borders. The intoxication of power. And then, the visions. The oracle gift showing her the future. An endless night where vampires ruled and humanity became cattle. The world drowning in blood. Draven, unstoppable and alone, having killed or banished anyone who questioned him. Including her. You would have killed me, Mira said, the memory sharp as broken glass. In the vision, 10 years from that moment. I questioned your plan to march on Vienna, and you. She touched her throat, remembering phantom pain. I never would have, Draven said roughly, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. The war madness. It takes us all eventually. Vampires aren't meant to build empires. We're meant to hunt, to feed, to survive. But I thought I could be different. I thought. You thought love would save you, Mira finished. But I saw the truth. Love wasn't enough to stop what you were becoming. An arrow whistled past Myra's ear, embedding itself in the tree behind her. They dove for cover as more arrows followed, silver-tipped and burning with a sick green light. Mira pressed herself against a fallen column while Draven moved in a blur, yanking arrows from the air and snapping them. Show yourself, Cain. Draven roared. Laughter echoed through the ruins, deep, mocking wrong. From the shadows of the broken palace, figures emerged. Vampires, but twisted wrong. Their skin was gray and cracked like dried earth, their eyes burning with that same green light. 8 of them, all wearing armor that had rusted over centuries. And leading them was Cain. He looked more alive than the others, his scars pronounced in the dawn light. When he smiled, his fangs were black as coal. My king, Cain said mockingly, spreading his arms. How wonderful to see you again. And you brought the oracle. How convenient. You were banished, Draven said. The blood seal should have kept you sleeping for another 500 years. Should have. But then she woke up, Cain pointed at Mira. The moment she spoke in the old tongue, the seal fractured. Just a crack, but enough for those of us with strong will to slip through. He gestured to his companions. We've been waiting in the shadows, feeding, growing strong. What do you want? Mira demanded. The same thing I wanted 3 centuries ago. To finish what we started, Cain's smile widened. The oracle sealed the court to stop our conquests. But she never destroyed our power, she only imprisoned it. Now that she's back, now that the seal is breaking, he took a step forward. We can rise again. Properly this time. And you, sweet oracle, are going to help us. I'll die first. Oh, we're counting on you dying, Cain nodded to his companions. But not before you speak the words of full awakening. See, we learned something over the centuries. The seal can't be removed, but it can be transferred. From the court his eyes gleamed. To the one who made it. Draven moved to stand in front of Mira. You'll have to go through me. Gladly. Cain attacked. He was faster than Draven, stronger, centuries of rage, making him vicious. They collided with a sound like thunder, tearing through the ruins. The other vampires rushed forward, and Mira ran. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to lead them away from Draven. Behind her, she heard his shout, rage and pain mixed together. She heard Cain laugh. And she heard the sound of a body hitting stone. Mira dragged Draven through the forest, his arms slung over her shoulders, his weight nearly impossible to bear. Blood, impossibly black in the moonlight, soaked through his shirt where Cain's claws had torn into his side. "Leave me," Draven rasped. "You can't. They'll find us." "Shut up," Mira grunted, pulling him forward. "You don't get to save me from arrows and then die in the woods." She'd lost Cain's vampires in the dense forest, but she could hear them calling to each other in the distance, their voices carrying through the trees like wolves on a hunt.
They had minutes at best.
Through the darkness, she saw it. A structure, small and crumbling, barely standing. A chapel, its roof half collapsed, its windows empty of glass. But the stone walls were still solid, and the door hung on rusted hinges. Good enough. She dragged Draven inside and let him collapse against the far wall, beneath where an altar once stood. Moonlight streamed through the broken roof, painting everything in silver and shadow. "I'm dying," Draven said matter-of-factly. Cain's claws were poisoned with silver and wolfsbane. For a vampire, he coughed, and more black blood stained his lips. "That's the end." "No," Mira knelt beside him, her hands hovering over his wounds. She could see bone through the torn flesh. "There has to be something."
"Blood."
"You need blood, right? Take mine." "Human blood won't heal this." His eyes were dimming, the silver light fading. "Only vampire blood could save me now, and I'm the last of the royal line," he smiled weakly. "Ironic. I survived 300 years of exile only to die protecting the woman who destroyed my empire." "I didn't destroy it," Mira said fiercely. "I saved you from yourself." "Same thing." Outside, a howl split the night.
"Closer now."
Much closer. Myra's mind raced. There had to be something, some spell, some magic. She was the Oracle, wasn't she? She had power. She just needed to remember. The memories came flooding back. She saw Alara in this very chapel. No, not this one, but one like it. Saw her performing a ritual that was forbidden even among the Oracle Council. A soul binding. The most dangerous magic in existence, because once two souls were linked, they shared everything. Strength, pain, life, death. "There's a way," Mira whispered. "But it's forbidden." Draven's laugh turned into another cough. "We're a bit past worrying about rules. It'll link us. Our souls. Forever." Mira met his fading eyes. "If you die, I die. If I die, you die. We'll share strength, but we'll also share every emotion, every memory. There won't be any separation between us." "You would do that? After everything I almost became?" "You didn't become it," Mira said firmly. "Because I stopped you. Because some part of you let me." She took his cold hand. "And I need you now. I can't face Cain alone. I can't control the court spirits alone. I can't." She couldn't finish. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. She didn't want him to die. "Do it," Draven whispered. Mira closed her eyes and reached for the memories, for the words in Old Noctis that Alara had spoken 300 years ago in a moment of desperation, identical to this one. Her hands moved to Draven's chest, over his heart. His hand covered hers. She began to speak. The words flowed like poetry, like song, like prayer. The air around them began to glow. Not violet this time, but pure white, bright enough to hurt. Mira felt her soul reaching out, felt it touch something vast and cold and ancient. Draven's soul. She saw everything. 300 years of loneliness, of regret, of watching the world change while he stayed frozen, unable to move forward, unable to forget. She felt his love for Alara, for her a love so deep it had survived centuries of hatred and betrayal. She felt his fear that he would always be a monster, always be the thing that needed to be stopped. And he felt her fear and determination, felt her growing power as the Oracle awakened fully inside her, felt her memories of a lonely childhood, of always feeling like she was searching for something she'd lost, felt her love, new and terrifying and undeniable. Their souls collided, merged, became one. The light exploded outward, shattering what remained of the chapel's windows. Mira screamed as power flooded through her. Draven's strength, his speed, his centuries of knowledge. And Draven gasped as her warmth filled the cold places in his soul, as her mortality anchored him to something he'd lost so long ago he'd forgotten it existed. Humanity. When the light faded, Draven's wounds were closing. The black blood stopped flowing, and color returned to his skin. His eyes opened, blazing with silver light brighter than before. "I can feel you," he said in wonder. "Inside my mind. Your thoughts, your heartbeat." I know Mira could feel him too. It was overwhelming and intimate and right. "We're connected now. Truly." She helped him stand, and together they looked out through the broken chapel doorway. Cain's vampires stood in a semicircle, blocking their escape. 8 pairs of green eyes glowing in the darkness. And behind them, Cain himself, smiling his terrible smile. "How touching," he drawled. "The king and his oracle, bound for eternity. But it won't matter." He raised his hand, and the other vampires tensed, ready to attack. "You're still outnumbered. You're still going to speak the words of awakening. And when you do, the court will rise, not for him, but for me." Mira felt Draven's rage through their connection, felt his strength flowing into her. She smiled. "You want the court awakened?" she said in Old Noctis, her voice carrying power that shook the trees. "Then let me show you what a true oracle can do." The earth beneath Mira's feet began to tremble. Not from fear, from power. The soul binding had unlocked something inside her. Every memory Alara possessed, every spell, every fragment of oracle magic that had been sleeping for 300 years. And now it was awake. "You want the court?" Mira's voice echoed with dual tones, hers and something ancient. Through her connection with Draven, she felt his shock, his awe. Then witness what happens when an oracle speaks with a king's strength behind her words. She raised her hands, and the words of Old Noctis poured from her lips, not the fractured phrases from before, but the full incantation, the true language of power. The ground split open. Violet light erupted from the cracks, shooting into the sky like pillars. In the distance, the hotel began to collapse, its foundation crumbling as the vault beneath finally gave way. But the spirits weren't trapped anymore. They were rising, pulled by Mira's call. Cain's smile faltered.
"No."
"You're supposed to be weak, confused." "I was," Mira said. "But now I remember everything, including how to command what you sought to steal." The spirits came. They materialized around the chapel, dozens at first, then hundreds, the entire Noctara court answering their oracle summons. But they weren't the hollow-eyed shadows from the vault. Mira had called them differently, shaped them with intention. They manifested as guardians. Warriors in spectral armor, scholars wielding magic that made the air shimmer, advisors whose very presence radiated authority. And all of them, every single one, turned toward Cain's vampires with eyes that burned violet instead of green. "The oracle commands," the armored woman from the vault said, materializing at Mira's right side. "What is your will?" Cain snarled. "You can't control them. They're bound to the royal bloodline." "And she's bound to me," Draven said, stepping forward. Through their connection, Mira felt him channeling his authority, his centuries of rule, flowing it through their joined souls into her words. "What she commands, I command. What I decree, she decrees. We are 1 inch. Then you'll both die." Cain launched himself forward, his twisted vampires following. The battle that erupted was chaos. Cain's vampires were physical, solid, deadly. They tore through spirit warriors, their greenlit claws dispersing the spectral forms like smoke. But the spirits reformed, relentless, and for every spirit destroyed, 2 more rose from the cracking earth. Draven met Cain in midair, their collision sending shockwaves through the forest. Trees splintered. The chapel's remaining walls crumbled. They fought with the fury of centuries of betrayal, claw and fang, each blow powerful enough to shatter stone. Mira directed the spirits with gestures and words, feeling the strain of maintaining so many manifestations at once. Through her bond with Draven, she felt his pain as Kane's claws raked across his back, felt his determination as he fought to keep the general away from her. One of Kane's vampires broke through the spirit line, rushing toward Mira with claws extended. She didn't flinch. She spoke a single word in Old Noctis, and the vampire froze mid-stride. His eyes widened in horror as his body began to petrify, gray skin turning to actual stone. In seconds, he was a statue, forever trapped in his attack pose. "The binding," Kane roared, seeing what she'd done. "You're using the original binding spell?" "Modified," Mira corrected. She was breathing hard, sweat running down her face, but her voice was steady. "I'm not sealing you away this time. I'm ending you." She raised both hands, and every spirit stopped fighting. They moved as one, forming a circle around Kane's remaining vampires. Their combined voices rose in a chant that made the very air vibrate. The twisted vampires screamed as stone began to creep up their legs, their torsos, their faces, preserved forever in expressions of rage and fear. Only Kane remained free, held in place by Draven's grip on his throat. "It's over," Draven said, his voice cold. "Surrender, and I'll make it quick." Kane laughed, a broken, desperate sound. "You think you've won? The court is awake now. The seal is broken. Others will come, others who remember the glory of our empire." "There is no empire," Mira said, walking toward them. The spirits parted for her, bowing as she passed. "There's only the lesson. The one I died teaching 300 years ago." She placed her hand on Kane's chest over his heart. "Power without wisdom destroys. Strength without mercy corrupts." You never learned that, she met his eyes. "But the court will." She spoke the final words. Kane's scream cut off as stone consumed him from the inside out. In moments, he was just another statue, his expression frozen in eternal rage. Silence fell over the forest. The spirits turned toward Mira, waiting. Through her bond with Draven, she felt his question, his uncertainty about what came next. "Return to rest," Mira commanded gently. "Not sealed, not imprisoned.
Just rest."
The age of empires is over. The age of endless night is over. Sleep peacefully, knowing the world is safe." One by one, the spirits bowed. Then they faded, dissolving into mist that sank back into the earth. The violet light dimmed. The cracks in the ground sealed. In minutes, the forest was silent again. Only the stone statues remained as evidence of what had happened. Myra's legs gave out. Draven caught her, holding her against his chest. "It's done," she whispered. "It's finally done." Above them, dawn broke through the trees. The storm that had raged for 2 days cleared, revealing a sky painted in shades of gold and pink. A new day. A new beginning. 1 week later, the authorities found the hotel. Or what was left of it. The entire western wing had collapsed into the earth, creating a crater where the lobby once stood. The remaining structure looked like it had aged 100 years overnight. Walls cracked, windows shattered, vegetation already creeping through the broken stones. Inspector Kovac stood at the edge of the crater, studying the destruction with narrowed eyes. His partner, young Officer Hess, was pale, clearly disturbed by the scene. "Gas explosion," Hess read from the preliminary report. "That's the official theory. But Inspector, the geological team says the ground here is completely stable. No seismic activity, no fault lines. And the crater." He pointed down into the darkness. "It goes down at least 200 feet. What kind of gas explosion does that?" Kovac didn't answer. He was looking at something else, the statues. 8 of them, scattered through the forest around the hotel ruins. Human-shaped, but the expressions were wrong. Too anguished. Too real. And the stone itself was unusual, gray and slightly translucent, like frozen smoke. "And these," Hess continued nervously, The art historians say they're not from any known period. The composition isn't like any stone found in this region. It's almost like they're— Where are the guests? Kovac interrupted. The hotel register showed 15 people checked in. All accounted for. They were found at the inn in Vulture, claiming they'd left due to renovations. None of them remember anything unusual. Hess paused. Except the maid. Mira Desh. She's the only one still here. Show me. They found her by the lake at the base of the mountain, a small, pristine body of water that reflected the sky like polished glass. She sat on the shore, her feet bare, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She was staring at the water with an expression Kovac couldn't quite read. Peaceful, but also not alone. Miss Desh. Kovac approached carefully.
I'm Inspector Kovac.
I need to ask you some questions about what happened at the hotel. Mira turned to look at him, and Kovac stopped short. Her eyes were different. Not a different color, they were still brown, but there was something in them.
A depth.
A silver shimmer that appeared and disappeared when the light hit them just right. Inspector, she said, her voice pleasant but distant. I've been expecting you. You're the only witness who remained. Can you tell me what happened? A storm, Mira said simply. The foundation was old. It collapsed. That doesn't explain the crater. Or the statues. Or— Kovac pulled out a photograph. This. It was a photo of the hotel's guest register, open to the final page. Most of the names were legible, but one entry was strange. The ink had turned silver, and the name written there seemed to shift when you looked at it directly. Draven Voss. Room 12. Checked in, 1955. Checked out, never. Who is Draven Voss? Kovac demanded. Mira smiled, a soft, secretive expression. Someone who needed to find peace. Miss Desh, 15 people are claiming they can't remember 3 days of their lives. We found traces of unknown substances in the hotel's ventilation system. There are statues that shouldn't exist, and a crater that defies geological explanation. Kovac stepped closer. I think you know more than you're telling me. Do you believe in second chances, Inspector? The question caught him off guard. What?
Second chance.
Do you believe people or things can be redeemed? That mistakes made centuries ago can be corrected? Mira turned back to the lake.
Ida.
I have to. Kovac followed her gaze to the water. And froze. Myra's reflection was normal, a young woman sitting by a lake. But beside her reflection, in the water, stood a man. Tall, aristocratic, dressed in dark clothing that looked both modern and ancient. His eyes glowed silver, and when he smiled, Kovac saw the flash of fangs. The inspector stumbled backward, his hand going to his sidearm. What? There's no one. He looked at where the reflection indicated the man should be standing. Empty air. Just Mira, alone on the shore. But in the water, the man remained, his hand resting on Myra's shoulder. You can see him, Mira said, not a question. Some people can. Those sensitive to what lies beneath the surface of things. She stood, brushing off her dress. His name is Draven. He was a king once. Now he's something else. This is impossible, Kovac whispered. Most important things are— Mira walked toward him, and as she passed, Kovac felt a chill, like standing near an open freezer. You'll file your report. Gas explosion. Structural failure. The guests will forget. Life will go on. And you? I'm going traveling, Mira said. There are others like him. Lost souls who need guidance. Old places where magic still sleeps, waiting to cause trouble. She glanced back at the lake, at the reflection that smiled at her. We have work to do. Kovac watched her walk away, disappearing into the forest path. Officer Hess came running up, out of breath. Inspector, we found something in the crater. Old chambers, like catacombs, but they're empty. It looks like they were opened from the inside. He paused. What did the witness say? Kovac stared at the lake. The man's reflection was gone now, but the water seemed to shimmer with an inner light. She said, Kovac murmured, that the king walks again. 3 months later, reports began to surface across Europe. A young woman with silver-touched eyes, appearing at sites of mysterious occurrences. Always alone, witnesses said. But security cameras sometimes caught two shadows where there should be one. In Prague, an ancient vampire nest was found sealed in stone, prevented from waking. In Vienna, a blood cult disbanded overnight, their leader found kneeling in submission, speaking of an oracle. In Paris, a cemetery rumored to be haunted fell silent, its restless spirits finally at peace. And always, at each site, someone reported seeing her by water, lakes, rivers, fountains, speaking softly to a reflection that spoke back. The maid who answered a call in an ancient language had become something more. A guardian,
A guide.
a bridge between the living and the eternal. And she was never alone. In her chest, where her heart beat, another heart beat with it. In her mind, where her thoughts formed, another mind whispered wisdom earned over centuries. In her soul, forever intertwined, a king who had learned that true power wasn't conquest. It was redemption. The reflection in the water smiled. And somewhere, in a language the world had forgotten, two voices spoke as one. The throne is not empty. It has simply learned to walk. The end.